an extraordinary ability for one who perhaps had a background that was much more difficult than we realised. So therefore, the ability to always see positive and move forward must have been built into his psyche. It must have been an incredible challenge to have to deal with.
The room fell silent before Princess Anne had finished the first sentence. Resting beneath her hand was a private diary once belonging to Prince Philip, open to a page Charles had spent years trying to forget. The entry did not merely question Meghan's intentions. It recorded a warning delivered directly to the future king, a warning about ambition, influence, and the danger of allowing royal status to become a weapon beyond the palace's control. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne had summoned Charles and William to Windsor Castle, without advisors or private secretaries. She wanted no softened language and no prepared escape. Windsor Castle, one of the monarch's principal royal residences, carried generations of memory, making the meeting feel like a judgment. She opened a sealed personal folder and removed the page separated from Philip's main archive. The princess explained that the diary had never been an official royal record. Philip had used it to preserve private conversations, family anxieties, and conclusions he considered too dangerous for palace staff. She placed the book on the table and read the documented entry aloud herself. Her father had warned Charles that Meghan intended to build an independent public power base while drawing authority, visibility, and prestige from the crown. Charles recognized every word. He tightened his grip on the chair and asked his sister why she had chosen to expose the warning now. The king offered no denial because the conversation had happened. Philip had confronted him directly, and he had answered that patience, kindness, and greater inclusion would eventually soften Meghan's resistance to palace control. William felt anger rise before surprise could reach him. His grandfather had seen the danger long before the family split became public, yet his father had hesitated. The future king understood why the warning mattered. Royal status carried influence because it remained tied to duty, limits, and collective responsibility. Meghan, according to Philip's account, wanted enough freedom to reshape that influence around herself and Harry while avoiding the restraints protecting the institution. Anne did not allow the silence to settle. She told them that the page contained more than suspicion. It recorded the exact encounter that had changed Philip's concern into certainty. Charles lowered his eyes. William leaned forward. Suddenly, the diary was no longer about an old disagreement. It was a map leading back to the moment everything began. To understand why Philip wrote those words and why Charles could barely look at the page, the story must return to the people whose choices transformed one private warning into a fracture across the monarchy. The diary entry struck each person differently because each had something different to lose. Anne saw the monarchy her father had defended for a lifetime. William saw proof that his instincts had been dismissed. Charles saw an old failure returning in his father's handwriting. Beyond the palace walls, Meghan stood at the center of a conflict driven by one question. Did she want acceptance within the institution, or freedom powerful enough to rival it? Anne felt the weight personally. Her bond with Philip had been built on honesty, discipline, and the belief that royal duty demanded sacrifice before comfort. Royal duty meant the obligations carried by working members of the family on behalf of the crown and public. She believed her father left the warning because he feared Charles would never finish what he had avoided. Charles had approached Meghan with warmth rather than suspicion. As a father-in-law and future monarch, he wanted to welcome her, protect Harry, and prove the family could change without appearing cold. That choice trapped him between regret and defensiveness. He knew patience may have allowed tensions to deepen, yet he refused to accept that compassion had been weakness. William remembered the private conversations. He had urged caution when Meghan and Harry pushed for control over their image, staff, charitable direction, and dealings with the press. The prince had not demanded punishment. He had demanded boundaries. Now Philip's handwriting confirmed that his concern had been shared before the rupture became impossible to hide. Charles slowly removed his glasses and placed them beside the diary. The king said nothing for several heartbeats. That gesture revealed more than denial could have done. His father's words had reopened an argument left unfinished by death, and the monarch could no longer answer the man who had challenged him. Anne broke the silence. She explained that Philip had never feared Meghan's confidence alone. His concern was royal identity, the authority and public trust attached to belonging to the monarchy being separated from royal obedience, meaning the rules and collective limits that kept individual ambition beneath the institution. William leaned closer as his aunt revealed another detail. Philip had supported firmer restrictions months before the final break, including limits on commercial opportunities and independent branding. He believed royal prestige could not become a private business tool while remaining protected by the crown. Then Anne named the moment that had changed everything. A private exchange after a royal strategy gathering, when Meghan asked a question no senior royal had expected. That question would become the hidden trigger behind Philip's warning, because what happened after the meeting convinced him that the conflict was no longer about adjustment, it was about control. The warning did not begin with a newspaper headline, a family argument, or a dramatic departure. It began behind a closed door, after a royal strategy meeting, when Meghan remained behind and asked whether she and Harry could keep the authority of their titles while operating beyond direct palace supervision. Others heard a practical question. Philip heard something far more dangerous, an attempt to divide the privileges of monarchy from the restrictions that gave those privileges legitimacy. Charles had gathered Philip, William, Harry, and Meghan at Windsor Castle to discuss their future charitable roles and public responsibilities. The Royal Foundation was the family's shared charity structure, designed to coordinate causes, staff, and public campaigns under palace rules. Meghan challenged the slow approval system governing speeches, media projects, overseas initiatives, and partnerships. She argued that delays weakened their impact and prevented them from responding to the public with speed. William listened carefully. He understood her frustration, but he also knew why those controls existed. Every campaign connected to a working royal carried the weight of the crown, meaning one private decision could create political, financial, or diplomatic consequences for the entire family. Harry supported his wife's desire for freedom, yet he remained unusually quiet as the tension deepened. Meghan waited until the meeting began to break apart. Then she turned to Charles and asked whether she and Harry could retain their senior royal standing while approving commercial partnerships and global campaigns without full palace oversight. Senior royal standing meant serving publicly on behalf of the monarch while receiving the status and institutional support attached to that role. Charles answered gently. The king explained that royal authority could not be separated from accountability. Meghan's expression hardened. She heard another restriction, another warning that her voice would always remain beneath a system she believed was too slow to understand her potential. Philip watched Harry say nothing. The older royal heard Meghan argue that their popularity gave them the power to modernize the monarchy faster than tradition allowed. That silence disturbed him almost as much as the question itself. Later that evening, Philip confronted Charles alone. He closed the study door, placed his walking stick beside the desk, and warned that public admiration became dangerous when someone began to mistake popularity for authority. He believed Meghan was testing whether the family would permit a parallel royal identity connected publicly to the crown, but controlled privately by her and Harry. Charles rejected that judgment. He insisted she was frustrated, inexperienced, and still capable of becoming a powerful asset if given patience and reassurance. Philip remained unconvinced. That night, he recorded the exchange in his diary and ended with a prediction. If Charles refused to draw the boundary, another member of the family would eventually be forced to draw it for him. Years later, with that prediction lying open between them, Anne decided the boundary her father demanded could no longer remain theoretical, and Charles was about to discover how far she intended to go. Charles tried to close the diary, but Anne stopped him with one hand pressed firmly against the page. There were no aides in the room, no private secretaries to soften the language, and no official statement waiting to turn pain into protocol. For the first time, brother and sister faced the decision that had haunted the family for years. Whether Charles had protected Harry and Meghan or simply postponed a crisis until it became impossible to contain. Anne refused to let Philip's warning disappear again. She demanded that the entry be acknowledged within the family archive, the protected collection where private royal papers are preserved for historical record. To her, the page was no longer a personal disagreement between father and son. It documented advice about the future of the crown, and hiding it would mean hiding the failure that followed. Charles pushed back immediately. The king warned that preserving the entry in an official form would be seen as an attack on Meghan. Harry would believe the family had turned his grandfather's private fears into a weapon against his wife. deepening an estrangement that had already cost them years of trust. Anne's voice hardened. She accused her brother of confusing silence with mercy. Avoiding painful decisions had not protected Harry, she said. It had allowed anger to deepen, suspicion to spread, and every delayed conversation to become another reason for the family to distrust one another. Charles rose sharply. He told his sister that she had never carried his burden, the duty of protecting the monarchy, while knowing one firm decision might drive his son away forever. The monarch reached for the diary, but she pulled it back and closed the cover before his hand touched it. Anne held the book firmly. Philip's words, she told him, belonged to the history of the crown, not merely to Charles's private conscience. The crown meant the enduring authority and responsibilities of the monarchy, greater than the personal wishes of any individual sovereign. William remained tense and silent until his father turned toward him. Charles asked whether he supported Anne. The prince chose his words carefully, but his answer landed with brutal force. Philip's warning should have been acted upon while the family still had a chance to prevent the rupture. Anne then opened the folder again. She revealed through Philip's documented second note that Charles had promised to establish clear limits, only to delay the conversation repeatedly. The king finally admitted why. Harry had warned that stronger restrictions would drive Meghan away, and Charles feared his son would follow her. The confession changed the argument. Anne declared that the issue was no longer whether Meghan should have been stopped years earlier. The question now was, who had the authority to decide what happened to Philip's warning? The diary had exposed the failure, but the power to determine its consequences rested with more than Anne, and behind the next decision stood William, the royal archives, and Charles's own authority as king. The battle moved from emotion to power. Philip's diary was a private possession, a historical record, and a potential weapon all at once. Charles believed his position as king gave him the right to seal it indefinitely. Anne believed her father's warning had become part of the monarchy's moral history. William understood something both of them feared admitting. Whoever controlled the page could shape how future generations judged every decision that followed. Charles ordered the diary returned to the restricted royal archive, while legal and historical advisors examined its status. The restricted archive was a secure collection of sensitive royal papers unavailable to the public without formal permission. The king wanted them to determine whether Philip's entry remained a private family document or had become a sovereign record, a paper connected directly to the duties and decisions of the monarch. Anne objected without hesitation. Her father had recorded advice delivered to a future king about the conduct of working members of the royal family. Working royals were those who represented the monarch through official duties and public service. To her, the warning had crossed beyond private emotion the moment it addressed the stability of the crown. William felt the pressure closing around him. Supporting Charles might preserve unity with his father. Supporting Anne would validate concerns the prince had carried for years. He respected Philip too deeply to dismiss the page, yet he understood that exposing it could destroy whatever fragile path remained toward Harry. Camilla urged Charles to slow down. In a private conversation, the queen consort warned that suppressing the diary would look like fear, while releasing it could turn reconciliation into an impossibility. She knew Harry would see publication not as history, but as a final attack on Meghan. Charles remained alone with the closed diary after the meeting. Camilla found him standing over it, unable to move away. The king admitted that Philip's handwriting made him feel as though his father were still across the room, waiting for him to defend choices he could no longer change. Then the archive custodian delivered the discovery. Through a documented examination of the sealed folder, the official confirmed that Philip had deliberately placed the entry inside an envelope marked for Anne. That single detail meant he had trusted his daughter to decide whether his warning should someday be confronted. Anne opened the envelope again and found a shorter instruction beneath the page. Philip had ordered that William be shown the entry if the danger he predicted ever threatened the future stability of the crown. The future king now understood that his grandfather had expected the conflict to outlive him. Charles still held authority over public disclosure, but Anne and William possessed Philip's personal mandate to preserve the truth within the family. Before the king could decide what happened next, news of the diary reached Harry and Meghan. The warning had survived decades of silence, but once word reached California, it was no longer merely Philip's judgment of the past. It became a fresh accusation, demanding an immediate response. Meghan did not react with embarrassment. She reacted with fury. When Harry told her that Anne had read Philip's warning before Charles and William, She understood at once how the entry could define every controversy that had followed. A private question about independence was now being presented as evidence of calculated ambition. For Harry, the news created an even deeper wound. His grandfather had doubted the future they were building, and his father had never told him. Harry had received the news through a direct call from Charles. The king explained that Philip's diary contained a warning about Meghan seeking royal authority beyond palace control. Palace control meant the rules, staff oversight, and approval system governing those who officially represented the monarch. Charles insisted that no decision had been made to publish the page, but confirmed that Anne and William wanted it preserved and acknowledged within the family. Harry's anger erupted. He accused his father of allowing a dead man's private suspicion to become a verdict against his wife. The Duke's voice broke when he asked how long Charles had known what Philip had written. Silence answered before the monarch did, and that delay told his son the truth had been buried for years. Meghan heard betrayal in every detail. She told Harry that her demand for independence was being rewritten as proof of disloyalty. To her, the institution was using Philip's reputation to defend restrictions, briefings, and decisions that had made her feel trapped. She had asked for room to work. Now the question itself was being treated like a confession. Harry revealed something he had never explained to the family. He and Meghan had discussed the Windsor question beforehand. They genuinely believed a hybrid royal role could protect their household while allowing them to build a wider global platform. A hybrid role meant keeping selected royal duties and status while gaining more personal and commercial freedom. They had seen it as survival, not rebellion. The call ended without peace. Harry placed his phone face down and walked away without speaking. Meghan remained seated, staring at the dark screen before quietly declaring that Anne had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Charles lowered the receiver at Windsor and turned to Camilla. The king admitted that Harry had sounded less angry than betrayed. The queen consort understood the difference immediately. Anger could fade. Betrayal changed how every past act was remembered. Anne answered through a documented message delivered to Charles. She insisted that Philip's entry did not condemn ambition. It condemned the belief that royal authority could survive without royal limits. Then William made the move no one expected. The prince asked to speak with Harry privately without Charles, Anne, Meghan, advisors, or palace officials. For the first time since the diary surfaced, the next move would not belong to an institution or a monarch. It would belong to two brothers carrying different versions of the same family wound. There were no courtiers on the call, and no carefully approved phrases. William spoke first, but not as the heir. He spoke as a brother who had watched resentment consume years neither man could recover. Harry expected a lecture about duty. Instead, William admitted that Philip's warning had been severe, incomplete, and painfully accurate in one crucial respect. The family had allowed fear and silence to replace honest conversation until every disagreement became betrayal. William had arranged the private video call on one condition. Neither Catherine, Meghan, Charles, nor any advisor would join them. The heir was the person next in line to the throne, but on this call he refused to hide behind that future role. He explained that Anne had not opened the diary simply to humiliate Meghan. Their aunt had acted because Philip's written instruction ordered her to show the entry to William if the conflict ever threatened the monarchy's stability. Harry asked the question that had lived beneath every argument. Had his brother always believed Meghan entered the family with a plan to exploit royal status? The Duke's voice remained controlled, but the pain behind it was unmistakable. He believed his wife had been judged before anyone had tried to understand why she resisted the palace's rules. William answered carefully. He believed Meghan wanted influence, independence, and meaningful change. None of those desires made her dangerous. But she had underestimated how impossible complete freedom was inside a hereditary institution, a system where royal position passes through family succession, and where individual actions affect everyone connected to the crown. Harry removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. The gesture broke the distance between them. William admitted that he should have approached him as a brother, not as a future king defending an institution. The prince had spoken in warnings and consequences when Harry had needed honesty without judgment. William then said what Philip's diary had failed to make clear. His grandfather's deepest fear was not Meghan herself. It was Charles delaying difficult choices until affection, duty, and resentment became impossible to separate. Philip had predicted paralysis, and every person involved had paid for it. Harry finally conceded that he and Meghan had wanted the credibility of royal identity, while gaining freedoms the palace would never offer senior working royals. Senior working royals were family members who officially represented the monarch, and therefore remained bound by strict public, political, and commercial limits. William made his own admission. The palace had responded defensively and often failed to separate genuine institutional danger from Meghan's reasonable frustration with rigid traditions. Control had been mistaken for protection on both sides. The brothers reached one fragile agreement. Philip's entry should be preserved, but never weaponized as proof that every motive Meghan held was dishonest. Their decision gave Charles a path forward, one that respected the warning, without turning it into a permanent sentence against Harry and his wife. Yet before the king could announce that decision to the family, the existence of the diary entry broke into public view, and the monarchy's private pain became a national argument. By sunrise, Philip's private warning belonged to the world. Television screens carried the same stark words beneath photographs of Anne, Charles, Meghan, and the late Duke of Edinburgh. Supporters called it proof that Philip had foreseen the crisis. Critics called it the posthumous prosecution of a woman who could no longer defend herself within palace walls. Outside Windsor Castle, a crowd formed as the monarchy confronted a battle over memory, motive, and truth. The leak came from someone with direct knowledge of the archive meeting. That source confirmed that Anne had read Philip's warning aloud before Charles and William, transforming a private family record into a national controversy. The Royal Archive was the protected collection where sensitive family and state papers were preserved, which meant any breach threatened both personal trust and institutional control. Palace communications staff prepared an immediate denial. Charles stopped them before a single sentence was released. The king understood that denying the diary's existence would force the family into a lie that could later be exposed, making the cover-up more damaging than the warning itself. A morning newspaper captured the public mood with brutal simplicity. Beneath a black-and-white photograph of Philip appeared the headline, "He warned them." The diary page Charles could not escape. The words turned the Duke's concern into prophecy, and the monarch's hesitation into failure. A royal correspondent spoke live outside Buckingham Palace, the monarch's main London residence and administrative headquarters. She framed the crisis as a struggle between two truths: Philip defending constitutional discipline, meaning the rules keeping royal power politically neutral and publicly accountable, and Meghan challenging a system she believed denied her independence. Anne watched the coverage in silence. She hated seeing her father's private judgment turned into entertainment, yet she did not regret confronting Charles. To the princess, secrecy had already caused enough damage. Meghan watched social media reduce her motives to one sentence, written by a man who had never heard her complete explanation. She felt judged not only for what she had done, but for what Philip believed she might eventually do. The diary was no longer a warning. It had become a verdict in the public imagination. Charles entered the communications room, read the proposed statements, and set them aside. The king told his staff that the family would neither attack Meghan nor deny Philip's concern. William supported that position, urging his father to acknowledge that the warning identified a genuine conflict without pretending it explained every motive, emotion, or mistake. Charles chose restricted historical access for the diary, meaning it would be preserved but withheld from general public release. He also approved a statement admitting that unresolved disagreements over royal independence had caused profound damage on every side. The public demanded heroes and villains. Charles prepared to give them neither. The final meaning of the diary would not be determined by the loudest headline, but by whether the king could at last speak the truth his father had written and his family had spent years avoiding. Charles did not destroy the page, hide it again, or release it as a weapon. Instead, he gathered Anne, William, and Camilla in the same room where the diary had first been opened, and accepted what Philip's warning truly represented. It was not proof that one woman had caused every royal fracture. It was proof that ambition, fear, affection, and institutional duty had collided, and that Charles's refusal to confront that collision had allowed it to wound everyone involved. Charles formally ordered the entry preserved within the restricted royal archive as a historically significant private record. Restricted access meant the page would remain protected from public exploitation, while still being available to authorized historians in the future. The king also approved a carefully worded statement confirming that Philip had raised serious concerns about combining senior royal status with independent commercial and political influence. Charles then turned toward Anne and admitted what pride had prevented him from saying. Their father had been right about the need for clear boundaries. The monarch had delayed because he feared losing Harry, yet that indecision had helped create the very separation he had desperately tried to prevent. Anne felt her anger begin to soften. She closed the diary and reminded her brother that Philip had never expected perfection from his children. He had expected courage before a crisis made courage more painful and far more costly. Charles lifted a pen and signed the archival order. An archival order was the formal instruction deciding how an important royal document would be protected and accessed. The king slid the paper toward William, and the prince added his signature as witness. Philip's warning would survive, but it would never become an official instrument of revenge. William felt vindicated and heartbroken at once. His grandfather's instincts had been confirmed, but being correct could not return the years lost between two brothers. The future king understood that truth without compassion could deepen the same wound it claimed to explain. Charles sent Harry a personal written message. He stated that Philip's entry would remain part of the historical record, but it would not be treated as proof that every ambition Meghan held had been dishonest. Harry offered no reconciliation, yet he acknowledged the distinction. That response ended the immediate battle over whether the page would be erased, exposed, or used to condemn his wife. Philip had identified the central danger. No individual could claim the power of royalty while rejecting the discipline protecting its legitimacy. Yet the deeper failure belonged to a family that delayed honest conversation until private differences became public warfare. Anne's exposure forced Charles to face his father's wisdom and his own hesitation. The monarchy survived because the king finally understood that compassion without boundaries becomes weakness, while authority without compassion becomes cruelty. And so the diary was closed not to bury the truth again, but because its warning had finally been heard, its consequences accepted, and its place in the monarchy's history decisively settled. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.